everyone, and welcome to another episode of Taco Matta Tuesday, the show where we eat healthy, delicious tacos and have conversations about life. Fear is a mile wide and an inch deep, making it seem like it's an ocean, but when you take a step into it, you start to realize that it's not that deep after all, and you're actually able to keep walking through it. This is such an incredible visual because when we have anxiety or stress from making a big decision or just we're facing a big moment, if we just take the first step, what we tend to realize is that it's not death. We won't drown immediately, that there's so many other steps to take from here, even if we get a little wet along the way. This was a quote from an audio that I used today for one of my reels. And I loved it because this quote serves a reminder to me and just to all of us of how important fear is in our lives, how it can be so pivotal. It could either be the thing that completely changes your life for the best, or it can be the thing that keeps you from living your life for the worst. And so today, what I wanted to talk about was have another conversation about fear. I know that I've talked about it a couple times on the podcast, but specifically talk about turning our fear into fuel. So we're going to chat about that. But first, let's go ahead and talk about the taco of the week. Yeah. Y'all, carb loading week. We got a deck of strong this weekend. So stoked. So stoked to go and do my thing. And I'll be honest, I really enjoy carb loading weeks because sometimes, you just want to eat all the things. Actually, I think I always want to eat all the things. So there's that. But all that to say, if you are getting ready to carb load, if you are carb loading right now, if you need some ideas of just ways to change up your rice and meat and vegetable option that you're probably doing your load with, or if you just want something that's full of carbs, jackfruit tacos is the healthy, delicious recipe of this week. I've never had jackfruit before. We tried it for the first time. I'm a big fan. So if you would like to check out what in the world that recipe all entails, be sure to check out the show notes before you leave the episode today. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the topic of the week. So first, let me say that this topic of the week was inspired by a book that I just started reading called The Heart is the Strongest Muscle. And this book is by Tia-Clair Toomey, which if you have no idea who she is, 1, stop living underneath a rock. 2, please go watch her on YouTube or pull up any of the CrossFit games from the last 6 years and you will be completely inspired. Well, I should say 6 years previous to 2023. But she is a 6-time fittest woman on earth. And she is freaking phenomenal. And why I believe she's phenomenal is not just because she's a strong workhorse with just this insane grit. What I love about Tia is that she embodies so much of what I inspire to be, from the competitive side to the humble side to I want to share and make other people better. Like her confidence and willingness to go after it, but then also turn back around and show women what's possible. Like that to me is the type of athlete I want to be, the type of person that I want to be. So I absolutely adore her. So it was time for me to finally crack open her newest book that just came out in February. Again, it's called The Heart is the Strongest Muscle. And I'm addicted already. I find her perspective to be really interesting. And some of the things, they don't rub me the wrong way. It's not that correct wording, but like, they kind of make me go, oh, like they make me feel a little bit uncomfortable. I'm like, oh my God, like, I don't know if I feel the same way. Do I feel the same way? I don't know. But it's like through this, I'm realizing, wow, I still sell myself short a decent amount because I don't want to offend people, or I don't think that I'm there yet. I'm not ready yet. Like whatever the case is, I just realized that I don't fully see what I'm capable of. I feel it, but I don't fully see it and believe in it when it's time. And so this book is really pushing me in all the right ways. And I actually want to start off with reading you a little bit from the book directly. I have a couple things I'll read for you today. But in this part of the book, she's talking about in the 2022 CrossFit Games, she had made a rookie mistake in like one of the first few events, and that took her out of the rankings for like the top 3. Like it took her fairly low for what she's normally used to, especially at the start of the CrossFit Games when she's been so dominant the 5 years previously. But she started to talk about all of the negativity that came from, that specific moment. And so I wanted to read this part out. It says, those naysayers, those who thought that they were witnessing the fall of a champion and spent that first day of competition questioning, is this still for her? Has she lost her dominance? Is her reign ending? All of that actually did me a favor. All of that negative talk just fired me up. Some people like to tune out negative comments, but I don't. I turn the negative into a positive, and I use it as fuel for the next day's events. And I'm not going to apologize for that. So it was the worst thing that they could have done if they wanted to throw me off. I came back the next day into the arena roaring. Here is the bottom line. You know what you need to do with all of the energy you use to feed your fear. You need to use it to strike fear into your opponents. This was one of those sections where I was like, oh, wow, like I feel kind of uncomfortable but excited reading this because that is not the norm for me. My norm is I hear negativity and I'm either able to turn it into something positive, which she's doing, right? But usually I take that dial of all the naysayers, the negative talk, the inner critic, like whatever it is that's coming into my bubble, and I visual myself turning the volume down with a dial in my brain. And it helps me stay focused on what's important versus all of the extra stuff that's happening outside of my brain that's trying to cloud it and clog it from, again, what the real goal is here. And so when I read this, I was like, this is such an interesting perspective where I can see both my strategy and tactic, but it also hers working in certain times, certain experiences, certain situations. And so one thing that I specifically thought of is this upcoming weekend, the Deca Strong that I'm doing is at a gym. It was actually the gym that I competed at for the very first time, first Deca ever. So I'm really excited to go back there and just like reminisce a little bit of feeling like, yeah, like, holy crap, I came into this like just like a excited little puppy. I had no idea what to expect, got my ass kicked and walked out and was like, hey, I can actually do something with this. A year later, went to World Championships. Now here I am like shooting for an elite spot this year. Like it's just such a whirlwind. So I'm really excited to have that moment and just enjoy how much I've grown. But a lot of people are like negatively talking about the event this weekend because funny enough, there's actually 2 events going on. There's a Deca Mile that's going on down south, and then there's the Deca Strong that's going on up north. I'm upset that they're doing both on the same weekend because I would have ideally liked to do both, but neither here or there. Either way, people are like, why aren't you doing the mile? You know that you're not going to be able to get a good time on the Strong because their course is really slow. And the way that they set up their course is, it takes a decent amount of time in between transitions. And I'm not saying like you're like running across the room, but there's definitely a good couple of seconds that get tacked on during transition time. And at the end of the day, if you're trying to like qualify for something or break a PR, like you want a fast course. You don't want something where it's like 5 to 10 seconds to transition into the next thing. So I'm fully aware of that. I thought about that when I signed up, but when people kept talking about that and kind of like, I don't want to say that they were trying to make me regret my choice or want to change my mind. I was just sitting there thinking like, you know what? Like, watch me prove you wrong. Like, watch me show you that it does not matter if it's a slow course or a fast course. My training, the process, all of the hard work that I've been putting in, that is what's going to get me a good time this weekend. That is what's going to help me break my PR. And if I don't, it has nothing to do with that. It's going to have to do with the fact that it wasn't my day. I wasn't there yet. I haven't learned all the lessons, right? Fill in the blank. But it's not going to have to do with the negative talk around it being a slow course. So that is a specific situation where I see like, okay, let's turn the dial up. Let's use all of that negative talk as fuel. That's where I can see that working. But there's going to be other times where you have to balance that with, again, turning the dial down and just keeping the focus on what's most important and not worrying about what other people say. So I just wanted to bring that out to start the podcast out with, because it was just a really interesting perspective that I wouldn't have probably brought out on my own. And it just gets you thinking about certain situations in your life, especially when you're stepping up to big moments, when you're facing those fears, they're going to call for certain tactics and certain strategies, and that might work well for you instead of the opposite, right? So just wanted to read that out. But before we jump into the meat and potatoes of the podcast, I do want to just talk about my personal view of fear and just share that fear is something that has completely altered and has changed my life for the better. Like, I remember previous to 2018, the Kayla that was just, she lost who she was. She didn't know how to take a step forward without there being approval, without there being someone there to hold her hand, right? Without there just feeling like if she was to do something that she'd be loved and accepted. Like, that's a lot of the reason why she did the things. And now flash forward, after I left a toxic relationship, I stepped into fear by going after this weight loss goal that I had no idea if I would actually achieve it, to I fell in love with taking care of my body and wanted to share with other people how they could do it too. And I left my corporate job of 6 figures in 4 years, like being promoted up the wazoo, to just starting from absolutely zero and starting my own business, right? That was effing scary. Still scary. I can't believe that I did that, but I did that. All the way to now, right? Like making certain moves within my personal training career and, it's taking on these DECA goals when they hurt. They don't feel good. Like, this training is nothing but just pure hurt and grit and grind, right? So I think about all of these things, and if it wasn't for that initial domino of just learning how to do something that scared me, I would not be taking on the bigger challenges that I am taking on today. My thing that I preach, and I've preached it multiple times on this podcast, is that fear is your green light. Anytime that you feel fear, you know that that is your body, that is your nervous system telling you that this is exactly what it is that you need to do. The only reason why you feel that way is because it's unknown, it's uncertain. And unfortunately, our brain and our nervous system like familiarity. It is not bad. It does not mean that you're going to die, right? Like, think of the quote at the beginning. It looks like a freaking ocean, but when you step in, you realize it is not that deep. And so stepping into fear, every time that you feel those little like twists and turns in your tummy, that is what is going to make you an unstoppable human being. Hands down, right? When you look at those people that inspire you thinking, how in the hell did they make those decisions? Is because it started with one. And that one domino allowed for them to keep trekking through that mile-wide, inch-deep ocean. So I just wanted to share that if you were on the cusp right now of making a big decision or facing a big moment, that this is the biggest opportunity for you. And I'm so excited for you to listen to the podcast today to really take all of those fears and the things that you're feeling and turn them into fuel. So let's jump in with a couple of things. So I am going to reference the book because there are some things, again, that are inspired from the book, and then some of these are just my own thoughts. But this first one actually comes from the book itself, and this one is probably the one that hit the most for me. She was talking about how you view yourself, and she said, the moment that I started to view myself as a champion instead of a participant is when everything changed for me. It's when I went from winning the CrossFit Games in second place 2 years in a row to becoming the 6th-time fittest woman on earth. And I was like, whoa. Because for me, it's hard for me to be like, oh, I am going to walk into this room and think that my shit doesn't stink, or I'm going to own it unless I have the credentials to back it up. And I think that 99.9% of people would agree with me on that. But if we ever want to get to being a champion, to being on the top of the podium, to filling in the blank, whatever it is that you're shooting after, we can't wait to show up as her or him. We can't wait to show up as the champion. We have to be the champion today. And that means pushing fear aside of being a bitch, excuse my language, but for us women, we get looked at as when we have dominance and when we actually like have confidence and we go after for what we want, that we tend to show up in that light. Like, it's taking all of those fears of how we might offend people, of how we might be viewed or how we might be seen, right? Taking all of that aside, taking those fears and shoving them away and being like, this is how I want to show up today. I am not a participant. I am a freaking champion, and this is how champions show up. This is how they treat their body. This is how they think. This is how they train. This is how they recover. Like, I'm, again, speaking from an athlete mindset, because that is what I do majority of my time, is live as an athlete. But for you, what does it look like to show up as a champion every single day? Write those things down, post them somewhere where you can see them and review them every single day, and make that your champion mentality that you live your life by. So it's just an incredible reminder to not wait to show up as her when you've actually achieved the thing, or show up as him when you achieve the thing, to show up as that person now and be that champion in every single room that you walk into. And that doesn't mean that you're the asshole. It does not mean that you are that person, right? I'm putting that in like quotations. You can still be selfless. You can still be humble, but you have that mindset of like, I am here for a reason, and I know what I'm capable of doing, and I am trusting that I am enough and that I'm totally capable of doing the thing. So that's the first thing that I want to say, because I know that that could be really scary for a lot of us. And so that is the first thing I think that we can tackle to use as fuel for when it matters most. Another thing that I want to talk about also from the book is she has this whole section on winning unapologetically. And what she talked about in this section was not turning down your talent or your drive. Being so ecstatic and high on it, regardless of, again, what other people think. Regardless if they view it as an insecurity or a lack of confidence. Because she clearly says this, it's not. It's not whatsoever. And so what I took from this section was not putting limits on what I could do, because I only have a certain amount of experience. I think that it's super easy to fall into this trap of kind of what I talked about in the last little part there, of feeling like you have to have earned it, that you have to have the credentials. This is more or less like, oh, well, I don't have the experience, so therefore I'm not meant to win yet. So it's only appropriate for me to shoot for XYZ goal. And she's like, no, dude, if you've got the talent and if you got the drive and you believe in it, like, you go for it, even if you're the rookie at the CrossFit Games, because you never know what will happen. But if you put limits on yourself, then you're definitely never going to know what's possible for you. And she feels like the first couple of years that she competed at the games, that's what was happening for her is, oh, well, I'm just not in the same league as all of these other women. Like, they've been doing CrossFit for several years and I've only been doing it for a couple of months. Like, how dare I think that I am capable and deserving and ready to win the CrossFit Games? But really she was, and we saw what kind of dominance she really had after she got out of that mentality. And so how many of us right now are thinking, I'm just the rookie? There's no way that this is possible, right? Like, how many of us are sitting there thinking, like, I just don't want to offend other people? This is a fear that is keeping us from winning. And we have to lean into winning unapologetically. Not being like, oh, I'm just going to stay humble. I'm going to stay behind the scenes because, like, I just don't want to, ruffle the feathers. Like, no. Win unapologetically. Set goals. Set standards for yourself that are going to make you push hard, even if you don't actually ever get there. So that when you do get there, oh my gosh, could you imagine what you've accomplished by then? I just think about that all the time, of how almost like the fear of winning or the fear of ruffling feathers, the fear of what other people might think by setting goals so high, like how much that actually holds me back. So the short and point of it is that if you really feel like you have a talent, that you have an unstoppable mindset and incredible work ethic, use it. Go out there and win unapologetically. Don't hold yourself back because you don't think that you're deserving because you haven't put in as much time as the person next to you. Or maybe you're competing against this huge field of people and you are just this small fish against the big fish. Use this idea of win unapologetically and go against those fears of ruffling the feathers and really digging down deep internally into what you know is true for you. Okay. The next thing that I want to share about turning fear into fuel is this idea of putting up a horsey flap. And I'll explain what that means further. But this is from me. Tia Claire Jimmy did not talk about putting up a horsey flap. She probably has no idea what that means. But I was at the gym today and I was just training. And this week, I actually am also going to be starting another competition series. It's called the Cirrus Bricks Open. I was talked into it by the owner. He's like, I think you have a really good shot of winning. La la la. Anyways, so I stepped into fear of doing things that like I know how to do, but like some of these things would be brand new things that I'm not super strong with. I stepped into fear and I signed up for it. And so anyways, I'm sitting there on the rower and I'm doing my cool down drills. And he comes up to me because there's people that are doing their initial open testing and I'm doing mine on Wednesday. He goes, are you watching? Are you getting strategy? Like all the things? And I was like, no, why would I watch? And he's like, well, you know, like just to watch people, like see what they do and how they do it. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like I could totally understand that mindset. But for me, I know what I'm capable of. I know what my strategy is. I know where I'm at in this season of life and at this point in my training that it's not going to help me to watch Joe Schmo over there do box step overs and see how fast he skis. It's just not, it's not going to do anything for me outside of maybe get me to doubt myself or rethink my strategy. And I know that neither of those things are going to actually get me to where it is that I want to be. I know that doing my best right now in this moment by being smooth and fast all at the same time, by executing what I know how to do best, like that's what's going to get me to where I want to go. And he just kind of like gave me this look, was like, okay, like that makes total sense. And he goes, well, either way, I just like to watch people compete. And I was like, well, I agree, but not when I'm the one that has to compete against them, right? Like I trust me, I freaking watch reruns of CrossFit Games and all the other things all the time. And I do like to gain certain strategies from here and there and learn from other people. But when I'm competing, you guys, like this is the same thing. Like when I went out to World Championships this last year, I put up my horsey flap really freaking hard because at the end of the day, I do not want to run someone else's race because that race is not my own. That race is not true to me. I want to run the race that I know that I'm capable of running. And that sometimes is really scary, right? Because it's really easy to compare ourselves and we want to think about, or we want to prepare ourselves as much as possible and like make sure that we're doing enough and that we are enough and all the things. And it's like, sometimes you just need to shut everything and everyone out and just zone in. Actually, all the time, just zone in on what you know is true to you, what is important to you, what you know how to do, and just shut everything else out. So that might not be something that scares other people, but I know comparison does scare other people. And so stop the comparison game because we all know that it's not helping us. And instead leaning to just coming back internally, putting on that horsey flap, knowing that you are exactly where it is that you're supposed to be. And that's what I told him is like, look, here's the deal. Like my box step overs or whatever the case is, like whatever I'm competing on Wednesday, nothing is going to vastly change, A, by watching this person, but B, in the next 24 to 48 hours with my abilities. There's not. I mean, maybe I could chop off a couple of seconds by, you know, using a specific like tactic, but outside of that, like nothing is going to vastly change. If my best right now with where I'm at in this point of my training, if my best is the best of the field, then I deserve to win. And I am fully understanding that if that's the case for someone else, like hats off to them. They deserve to win this. But I'm just here to do this for me, to see what I'm capable of, and to more importantly, trust in the process, because trusting in myself and trusting in the process has been such a freaking battle for me for the last couple of years. And just knowing that, again, if I just stay in the moment and I stay exactly where I'm supposed to be, like that the right things will come for me. And so by putting on that horsey flap, it allows for me to do that and just come back internally. So that is just something that has really helped me get out of my head, get out of the doubt, get out of the fear, and instead use what I know to be true about myself as fuel to go out there and do my absolute best. And that might turn into winning the race for me. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I feel really good about it. So that's something I wanted to mention as well too. Hopefully that makes sense. The last thing that I wanted to mention, and this one is actually going to come from Ted Lasso, but it's all about being in the moment. We talked about this last week with patience and presence. It was such a good episode. I recommend going back and going back and listening to that if you are struggling with both patience and presence. But he talks about, to his son, being the goldfish. And what he means by that is that goldfish only have a 10-second memory. They're basically freaking Dory. Okay, where like they say something and all of a sudden, like 10 seconds later, they forget, right? And I love that thought process so much, because how often do we, let's say we immerse ourselves in this specific race or whatever the case is, right? Whatever it is that you're doing, and something goes as not as expected. And it starts to throw you off your game. It starts to get into your head a little bit. And then that starts to impact the next move that you make. And then the next move after that. And then before you know it, your entire race is in flames. I've lived that race. I've lived that race a couple of times. And it's a really shitty race to run. So by being the goldfish, by being in the moment, it's being able to process like, okay, that happened. On to the next thing. That doesn't have to impact my next move. I can still keep going. Right? Like it's almost if you're a decker and you fall off the box, you just get back up and you keep going. In fact, I told one of my teammates, AJ, I'm going to send this to AJ now, just so he can re-listen to this part. But he was on the live stream a couple weeks ago when there was a DecaFit. I don't remember. Was it Knoxville? I can't remember. There's just been so many. But anyways, he did this awesome team run with another gal. And they're both just such amazing powerhouses. Like, absolutely loved watching them compete. But he was in charge of the box step overs and went fast and just caught his heel and fell over. And of course, it was on the live stream and he felt really embarrassed. But I told him, I was like, but you know what's really cool about that, AJ, is that you were able to get up and recover. And you just proved to other people that you can still win and still have a blazing fast time when the race didn't go your way. And I think that's more important for yourself to know, because now anytime that happens again, you can still trust that you have your own back and that you've got this, no matter what gets thrown your way. And I think that that's more important than running the flawless race, right? That being able to say like, oh, like this was happening, but I was able to overcome it, because life is not linear like that. Life is full of ups and downs. And that's one of the reasons why I love racing so much, why I love competing so much, and why I love doing ninja, is because every single ops course, every single race just mimics life, knowing that you're going to have ups, you're going to have downs, but all you can do is really focus on the obstacle that you were on right now, on the step that you were taking right now, and doing the best that you can in that specific moment, and therefore proving yourself that you can do hard things and that you might not have the most flawless race, the most flawless run, but that you can still do it no matter what. And so just this idea of like keeping fear at bay, because you're being present in the moment. You're not worried about the bike that's coming up next. You're worried about, I'm going to breathe and I'm going to take the next step and continue into the next station and then the next station. And it just allows for you to sink in and just truly feel and tackle what it is that's most important in that moment, right? Rather than making up these stories 5, 10, 15 years, minutes, days, however many of whatever's down the road. It's a trap that we all fall into. And so just remembering that all this fear can tend to be nipped in the butt if we just become the goldfish, we live in the moment, and we handle what's most important right here and right now. And so all of this to say, this is how I want to wrap up the episode today, is that when you take this step, when you face the big moment, when you go after the thing, what I want you to get really freaking excited about is the person that you're going to become on the other side of it. Not the things that you're going to achieve. Yes, be excited about the lessons that you're going to learn, but more importantly, like, be excited about the person that you're going to become on the other side. Because I can tell you that after the last 4 to 5 years of changing my life, I am stupid excited about the person that I've become on the other side of leaving toxicity behind. And I can't imagine the type of woman that I'm going to be for myself and for other people that are watching along the way. I can't wait to see what continuing to do these Decker races, continuing to push myself in my career. I cannot wait to see who that person is on the other side of all of the future challenges and things that absolutely scare the shit out of me. I can't wait to see who that woman is. And so if you can't do it for the woman that you are or the man that you are right now, do it for the person that's watching. Do it for the future you, because you know that that person is worth it. It's just such a great way to think about it, that what you accomplish is only going to last so long. But the person that you become and the legacy that you leave, that is undeniably the most special and important thing in life. Thank you guys so much for showing up for you today, and I truly hope that this podcast hit home. If it does, please be sure to rate or review the podcast or send this along to a friend that absolutely needs to hear this. And until then, you guys, I'll be so excited to go out there, do my thing this weekend, and I'm sure share so many more life lessons that come from the race. But go out there and turn your fear into fuel. Let this podcast inspire you to take the next step and really show yourself just how capable you are. Have a great week, you guys. I'll see you guys next week.